Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to the final weekly wrap-up of 2022. And this one of course is a double wrap-up because I was on vacation for the last 2 weeks, so this is weeks 51 and 52 all wrapped up for you. And yeah, there was quite a few rereads in this, of course, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm ending the month off for, so it's gonna be great. So before we dive into the books, I wanna get right into everything, but before we do that, let's go ahead and start with a shout out to a new channel member. We have a new channel member named Canadine, I think is how we say her name, and she joined at the Faded Friend level. So thank you so much, Canadine, for joining me here. It means so much to me. The winter time is when I have like the biggest dip in channel memberships and Patreon, just because it's a tough time for everybody. So anytime you're choosing to put your money towards me as a creator, it means so much to me because I know what it takes to support the channels that I do. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who stuck with me throughout the years, even if it's only for 1 month at a time. It does make a difference in my life and what I'm able to do. So thank you so much. But let's go ahead and dive into these books. We do have quite a few to talk about. I think we have about like 15 to talk about, so this is gonna be cool. A lot of these are rereads, but some of them are very new and exciting books. So if you are new here, I mean, welcome to week 52. I do have a playlist of all of the books that I read in 2022. I will have that linked up above where you can start with me back in January and make it to here. I will have my like end of the year videos coming soon. I have, of course, there'll be the December wrap up and then the complete end of the year wrap up, my favorites of the year video, and then my favorite book boyfriends will be getting a video. There's so much good stuff coming in the beginning of January. So I hope you will stick around for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and like this video. Those little things, even if you're not able to do a single other thing, those little things help so much. Shows YouTube that you care about my channel, and it keeps me getting recommended to others, which has been kind of the toughest road to hoe right now, because YouTube is just like, oh, not enough people are watching you for the holidays, let's just crush your little channel like this. But anyway, we won't get bitter about that, okay? We won't, because I still read a whole crap ton of beautiful romance that was so much fun, and so we've got to talk about it. So the first book that I finished was a reread, and that was What You See by Cherise Sinclair. This is book 3 in the Sons of the Survivalist. I do recommend you read these books in order. They don't do well if you just hop into one of them. The first book in the series is not a hero, and it does start this overarching story, which is starting to really pick up in this one. So in this one, we have Frankie, who has a best friend and a godson who are trapped within this cult that is called the, the PZs, the Patriot Zealots, and they're near this small town in Alaska. And so Frankie kind of puts her day job, her life on hold to go to this small town. She's been warned that one of the PZs is part of the police force. Now, if you've read Not a Hero, you know, if you start in the beginning, you'll know that there was someone on the police force who was a part of the PZs, but he's been booted. But Frankie doesn't know that, so she doesn't know that she can trust the police force, who is one of our heroes. But then we have Bull, who is a business owner. I mean, him and all of his brothers are business owners, but he runs like a bar and grill in town, and Frankie gets a job as a new server. However, her first day on the job, she sees him kind of dressing down verbally an ex-lover of his, actually his ex-wife, who had cheated on him, and so she gets a bad impression of him right off the bat, and she just assumes some things about him. Now, normally that would annoy me in a book, but the way that it all goes down in this one, I just really love. And it does not take long for the community and for this family to win her over. But she's still very cautious to share why she's there and what she's there to do, which is rescue her best friend and her godson from this cult. Things are getting very dark for Kit and her son in this cult, and it's very intense. I love the audiobooks for this series, and so that's how I did these while I was working on my beautiful quilt, which I'll insert a picture right here of my quilt that I've been making during December, and I listened to these books as well as Sarah J. Maas while I was quilting, and it was amazing. So that was a 5-star book for me. This book is really the only trigger warnings come from when we see what's happening to Kit and her son and the danger that they're in. But otherwise, this is a small town romance. This is a bit of romantic suspense. These are kind of like medium to low heat for the spice going on, but they're so just, they bring me so much joy. They make me so happy. And then, of course, after rereading What You See, it was time to reread Soar High, which is the climax, the conclusion of this 4-book series, and just hits my heart. It just hits my heart so good. This one is about Hawk, who is kind of the most damaged of the brothers. All of the brothers are actually retired vets, and then some of them have also done like mercenary work, so they like stayed in kind of that military mindset. Hawk has been injured. He shows up at this small town after being injured in one of his missions, and he is a pilot. He is very hardened. He has a lot of PTSD. He was mistreated by his family when he was young, and so he has a lot of baggage. The guy has a lot of baggage, but he becomes very well loved and very well entrenched in this family that he always loved his brothers, but he's come back and like his brothers have women now. One of his brothers has a kid, and he never expected there to be women and children near his home. Like, he doesn't know how to handle that in the beginning. But through some things that happen in What You See, he ends up being kind of the temporary like guardian of the little boy Eric, who is Kit's son, and this romance is between Kit and Hawk. And what's amazing is like he has his own types of PTSD, but he can tell what she has been through, and he knows a little bit of what she survived, and he's able to use some of what he knows to help him, as well as encourage her to go to therapy. Like, therapy is very much highly regarded in this series, and I really appreciated that. And the types of lessons that this family learns, it can seem so simple, but it really touches me, because some of the lessons that they're teaching, whether they're teaching the kids, because there are like two kids by this time. There is one of the heroes has a daughter that he discovers, and then we have little Eric. And there's lessons that they're teaching these kids, and they're honestly lessons that I need to rehear sometimes. And as well as learning how to take on the bad guys. There are some pretty epic like guerrilla fights that happen in here against the Patriot Zealots, and they always have me cheering and so excited. So, God, I just love this series. I won't stop talking about them ever, ever, ever. And they may become a staple reread every winter because I adore them so much. So that was a 5-star book, a 2.5 on the spice scale. And again, it does have trigger warnings for PTSD, domestic abuse, and like violence and things like that. So then I have 2 arcs to talk about. I read Hero by Claire Kent, which is out right now. This is book 4 in the Kindled series, which was so exciting. This one is novella length, and this one is actually probably like, well, none of them are like overly taboo. So they all kind of have like what seems like a taboo trope, but because these are like post-apocalyptic, like at the end of the world type things, the taboos that would normally exist with these relationships like doesn't really exist anymore. So this couple is Zed and Esther. And so Esther and her family had kind of all ended up in this small cabin when the end of the world event, which is like this asteroid hits Earth. That's what's happened in the Kindled series. That's what's going on. There was then this smoky haze and like unsafe air that was all around the world. And so a lot of people died from this. They got sick. Esther, her mother, was married to Zed's brother, but he was only 7 years older than her when her stepdad and her mom got married. So he's her step uncle, but she's really more looked at him as like an annoying like family member. And when the end of the world happened, she was like 18. So like when she was 15 and he was 22, that's when his brother and her mom got married. She just thought he was kind of a wastrel and was like a playboy, and he had a little bit of like a pot belly, drank beer and watched sports all the time. And she was going to be an astronaut. She was going to school to be an astronaut. And so when the end of the world happens, she's like 18, she's going to college. She goes back to home, and her brother-in-law has this hunting cabin. And so her mother, her brother-in-law, both sets of like grandparents are in this tiny little cabin. And then Zed and his girlfriend, who is pregnant, which they got pregnant after the apocalypse, so not the smartest people around, they show up at the cabin as well. And so there's 10 people at this cabin. And we have this epilogue where all the things that I just said are in the epilogue. That's something that Claire Kent does. She does these exposition dumps, but she gets it all out of the way, sets you up for what you're about to see, and then just lets it play out. So then we skip ahead to year 6 of the apocalypse. So, right, the way we're looking at this now, she's like 25, he's like 32. He has a 5-year-old little girl, or 4-year-old little girl. And they are running out of food and really not able to scavenge where they are anymore. And they might need to make the tough decision to try to move, which could be extremely dangerous with them and this little girl. And now Esther has a very, like, she hasn't really changed her opinion of Zed. She sees him as a good father now, but really she sees as really her only reason of being around him is that he's familiar and that she loves his little girl. Like, they both love this little girl, and this little girl is very attached to Esther. But as she does, this kind of morphs into a sexual relationship between them. Are we just seeing to each other's itches, or do we really have deeper feelings? Again, as always with Claire Kent, the man has very deep feelings that he's afraid to share because he doesn't want to, you know, pigeonhole her into anything, even though she has just as strong feelings for him as he does for her, type of thing. So, yeah, and of course they're going to end up connecting with the people that we already know and love. So this book, Hero, as I have shared, I think before in a video, was supposed to be about Mac and Anna, but when Claire was supposed to write their book, she just wasn't mentally there, so she decided to write this shorter one. Like we said, this is novella length, because this is what came to her. So Mac and Anna, they're still getting their books. She still has more books planned for this series. They just aren't right now. And that was kind of a bummer, but I really ended up liking Zed and Esther, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale, and the trigger warning is that we lose a lot of family members. But the way Claire Kent does it, it's never like in your face. We don't see those people die. And so it happens, but for being an apocalypse series, these aren't overly heavy. They stay a bit lighter type thing. So, yes. Then I read The Lone Wolf's Rejected Mate. I kept wanting to call it Alpha, but he's the lone wolf. He's not an alpha of anything. This is book 3 in her, the 5-pack series. Yes. And this is one I've been highly anticipating because I really loved Dara when we saw him in a previous book, and Mari is friends with the heroine from the first book. She was like a part of her like rejected female group. Like, they aren't all like rejected by their mates, but they are like rejects to the pack. They're seen as being really weak and like they can't contribute anything, and they're really kind of looked down on by the other pack members. And in this case, like, we are in the past for a good percentage of the book. And when Dara realizes that he's mates with Mari, and she has her first heat, he comes to her to do what wolves do. But then he leaves her, and we don't fully understand why. And Kate C. Wells makes a choice where we don't see Dara's POV for a good portion of the beginning of this book. And it becomes clear why once we get Dara's POV, because if we had Dara's POV, we wouldn't feel like as hurt by what he's doing to her. So I just want to put that out there. Although Kate C. Wells is still able to make you furious yet ache for Dara at the same time. She's so fucking good at doing that, y'all. She's so good at just destroying you. At the same time, you're like, why are you doing this, you stupid idiot? But also you're like, okay, but what's really going on? Because he wouldn't be doing this for no reason, right? Like, he's just able to make you, she's just able to make you feel that. So yeah, there is a very real and present reason why Dara thinks his wolf would be dangerous to Mari. I don't want to spoil everything, okay? Because I was able to piece together pretty quickly why he was doing that. And at the same time, because it's fated mate, like, you know it's going to be okay. So you're kind of like, Dara, you're just making us suffer for no reason. Like, come on. But I also, like, I understood because he wants to protect his precious mate, like, so much. And when you see the lengths that he will go to for his mate, I was so in. And like, this is my favorite one. Okay, this is my favorite one because to me, his reason for rejecting his mate, number one, it hurt him just as much as it hurt her. And his reason is the only one of the three so far to me that was a legitimate reason, right? Because the first one, the tyrant alpha's rejected mate, he's just kind of incredulous about, like, how can this person be my mate, right? And he's very cruel to her for just, like, you're like, whatever. And then in the heir apparent's rejected mate, you, like, kind of get it. And, like, his grovel was good, so it was fine. But it also just wasn't a good enough reason. And in this one, for me, in this one, because of the past that this wolf's had and what his wolf has done to protect him and what he's lived through, like, again, you know it's gonna be okay because it's fated mates. Like, a fated mate will help you get through anything, but Dara doesn't know that. He doesn't know that, and he doesn't want to risk his beautiful mate, who he just thinks is so precious and perfect, and he is willing to hurt them for their good, you know? He's wrong, but I understood his reasoning, and so I wasn't, like, railing against him. Like, the way in the first book, I was like, dude, you just better grovel on your fucking stomach. Like, you just better get down and beg for this woman. Whereas for Dara, I was like, no, sweetie, like, don't hate on yourself like this. You know, like, that's what I was feeling, okay? I was feeling different things. So this is my favorite one in the series. I adored it so much. I gave it 5 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale. There is also an outside conflict to this book that was, whoa, like, I was genuinely terrified in a great way. So yeah, the trigger warnings to this one are violence and kidnapping. And again, like, that's an outside conflict that it has to do with, and it was intense, okay? Oh, it was a lot. Loved it. Okay, moving right along, we have 3 rereads to talk about real fast. Let me grab those, actually. So we'll go through those quickly because these are books that I've already talked about because they're rereads, as well as I will be talking about because they'll be in my favorites list. So I had to reread Terrene, which I annotated for a patron. Was very happy to do that. This is book 6 no, it's not book 6. I wish we had book 6. This is book 5 in the Immortal Coven series. No, I don't know when we're getting Necrosis. No, I'm still sad about it, and I want it, and I want to know what's happening with Amara Ray. So Amara, if you're seeing this, tell us what's going on. If Amazon is being cruel and ruthless, let us know. I will write letters. I will write emails. I will do what I need to do. But this was one of my 6-star books. This book was a fated mate. He's a demon prince. She's a half witch, half shifter. She has been abused a lot. There is PTSD for her. There was sexual assault against her. And she has a lot of guilt because her body would often ease the way for her tormentors. And so she has a lot of, like, self-hatred for that. And our hero is so precious to help her get over a lot of it. I just love it. It's beautiful. He also has some sexual trauma because he grew up in a demon home and things were creepy around there, okay? But this book still, it has some of the most beautiful intimate scenes that I've read this year. It just made me so emotional, and rereading it was beautiful. So yes, 6-star read. This was actually the least spicy book in the series. I mean, it's still a 2.5, but it is that way because of the sexual trauma and the fact that we got to ease our way back in. You know, we got to ease our way into this. We can't just jump head first into some of this. We got to take our time. Then I reread Soul Eater. This was a 6-star book for me this year as well. This book, I've shared this before. I feel like this one isn't a 6-star completely, but it had stunned me so much when I read it, and it was one of my first 6-star reads of the year. And I don't regret giving it 6 stars, but this one isn't super high up on my list of favorites this year because I also think that I should have put Eden on my favorites list. Because there's a lot of this book that nothing's really happening. We're just traveling and having sex and traveling and having sex, which isn't horrible. But I feel like it doesn't, there's a good part of this book, which isn't very long, where we're just in the middle of it. But I'm not taking my 6-star rating away from it. And it still introduced me to Lily Mayne, and it introduced me to this Monstrous series. And so I'm very thankful for this book, and I adored it. So there's that. This book is a monster romance. It's also post-apocalyptic. It also has a road trip. It's also gay. It also is special anatomy. Wynn he has great anatomy. Okay, it's fun. It's a good time. It's okay. He has kind of yeah, I won't explain it. You can read it. But this is Danny. He's a soldier. He's kind of forced to be a soldier. And his commander is trying to use him as bait to catch the Soul Eater, who people see as this horrible killer, not realizing that there are reasons for what Wynn is doing, and he's actually trying to help people. But he also doesn't give a fuck whether they believe him or not, because it's Wynn. And so he's like, I want to do what I gotta do, and I'll kill any of you who get in my way, even though I'm here to help people, I will. And then he meets Danny, and he wants to keep Danny. So it's beautiful. I love it. I love it. It's a 6-star read. It is a 4 on the spice scale. There is trigger warnings for gore and violence, lots of it, and monster anatomy. So be ready for that. Then I reread Stolen by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This was also a 6-star read for me. This was so much fun to reread. I reread this one while I was on vacation, and it was so much fun. Oh God, I love Gabriel and Laura, and this one is about Laura, who she's a domestic slave. She's a domestic slave. Her mother was one before her. They get kidnapped by, I can't remember which mafia had kidnapped them, but when Gabriel and his men are there to take down her boss, she ends up getting shot in the crossfire. And so Gabriel takes her home, gets her fixed up, but then he wants to interrogate her because he believes that, because he had run into her earlier that day, and so he thinks she was a spy, thinks that she knew that he was coming, and then she had kind of run in front of who he was trying to shoot. She didn't do it on purpose, but I mean, to him it's just a little too convenient. So she gets brought to his home, and he's going to torture her, but he very quickly realizes this woman doesn't know anything. He also realizes that her body is covered in scars and wounds, and that things are maybe not what he assumed they were at the beginning. And then this becomes this beautiful slow burn where his whole household just kind of adopts her and brings her in and makes her a part of his family. And he is a dom for sure. It's not straight up said that, but he very much loves how submissive she is. And so once he realizes she wants to be in a consensual relationship with him, his dominance comes out, and it's very sexy because she likes being told what to do by him. And it's great. So that's a 6-star read for me. It was a 3 on the spice scale, and violence is a trigger warning, and domestic abuse, but domestic as in she was a domestic slave, and it's not great. Woofda. Okay, then I read Heat by R.Lee Smith. Oh, I don't want to rant about this book. I'll rant about it at another time when I talk about it. You know, I already made a video of my most disappointing and lowest rated books, and I was like, I'm not going to have any more lowest rated books this year. And then I read Heat, and I kind of hated it. I hated it. It was fascinating. It was brilliant. I'm going to talk about it in another video that I'm about to film, actually, where I talk about my angst meter. But this book is an erotic sci-fi horror. So, like, it does have an HEA, but it definitely leads more into the erotic horror than anything else. So there are these two aliens that end up on Earth. There is an alien who is a prisoner and a murderer, and he's here to murder a lot of humans to get the dopamine out of their brain. He will kill a human, take the place where dopamine sits in their brain, and leave them for dead. And guys, he does that to hundreds of humans in this book. A lot of times we even get the POVs of the humans as this is happening to them. And sure, some of the humans, they're bad people that he's doing this to, but do they deserve to be attacked or tricked or killed or murdered? No. And I know it's a horror. I know it's a horror. I didn't like to read that. I'm not for that in my romance. Don't want to read it. It doesn't matter if you said they're a biker gang who's bad people. Cool. But you also killed a literal entire movie theater full of children who are there having date night. And you killed them. And I'm not here for that. Like, I'm not here for it. Anyway, more about the story and then we'll move along. But so that's Cain. He's this, he's there. He also, what happens is these type of aliens. So it's him who comes to Earth and then the man who sent after him. So he is an alien cop and he's there to catch this guy. But the thing is that Earth's summer triggers their heat cycle. And when these aliens go into a heat cycle, they have to fuck. They have to fuck. And a lot, they have to. So they were literally going into these heat cycles like if they don't have air conditioning, which they don't even know what air conditioning is, but we eventually discover it and it's there. And it's very scary. So the alien who is a murderer, he decides, well, I'm just going to find a human woman because he is familiar with human women. His father had taken humans as slaves before, so he understands their bodies. He knows that their bodies can be very like tender and that sometimes you have to be careful. If you fuck them too hard, you can snap their hips. You can tear them inside with your big alien cocks if you're not careful. So his first interaction with a human woman, he kills her mate. They're camping. These two are camping. He kills her human mate and then he fucks her and she can barely walk afterwards. And so she walks into a river and drowns herself because she doesn't want to be raped by this monster again. And he's pissed that this woman was able to get away from him. So then he goes about killing some more people and he finds this woman who is willing to be fucked by him rather than be killed. And her name is Raven, and he makes Raven his slave. And when he discovers what tattoos are, he makes her take him to a tattoo shop. And at the tattoo shop, not only does he get her tattooed with his name on him, he gets her pierced all over. He puts piercings all over here and her genitals completely ringed in piercings for his own pleasure. But now she's been pierced and he can't just fuck her right away because it will hurt her. So he finds another woman to be his slave, and that's where we meet Sue-Ai, who gets brought in. And Sue-Ai, she's lived a hard life and she's very devious. I hate Sue-Ai to the bottom of my soul, but I also feel bad for her because she's lived a tough life. So Sue-Ai and Raven are the slaves of Cain, and we follow them as he gets them to take him to places where there are people for him to kill. And once he gets enough people killed to get enough dopamine, he's planning to leave the planet and use this dopamine to make a drug that will make him a lot of money. So he's a murdering, psychopathic bastard, and I hate him with every fiber of my being, okay? I hated him so much. I wanted him murdered every page that I read him. Nothing about him do I like. He's a sexual sadist in a horrible way. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. The redeeming quality of this book is Tegan. Tegan is the alien police officer, and when he ends up on Earth, he, of course, is struggling with the same things as Cain. He is of the same thing, so when it's hot, he is feeling this urge. He happens to have some medicine that he can take in the beginning that will suppress his heat cycle, so he isn't just falling on human women and raping them. He does accidentally kill some humans in the beginning, and he's like, no, I'm not here to do that. I don't want to do that. So he ends up coming across a woman named Daria who has a home. She's an agoraphobic. She doesn't leave her home because of some trauma she'd actually been through previously. She was hurt very badly. And so he kind of commandeers her home and needs her to teach him things about humans and help him find Cain so that he can stop this. So this one, it is kind of a captor-captive, but there isn't the raping that's happening. And when he runs out of medicine, Daria tries to help him find ways to deal with his heat, and eventually these two fall in love throughout the book. So, Tegan and Daria were a beautiful relationship to me. I didn't get enough of them. This book, again, is erotic horror. There was not a consensual sex scene in this book until there was a consensual scene between Daria and Tegan at about 60% into the book. Every other scene, and there is sex in every chapter, every other sex scene is rape or forced sex between Cain and the women that he's abusing for 60% of the book, okay? I know that this author writes that type of stuff, okay? I know that. And you know what? I really enjoyed Land of the Beautiful Dead, even though it hurt me. That one I enjoyed. This one I did not. I did not. And if it wasn't for Tegan and Daria, I would have DNF'd the book. But I liked them, and I wanted them to have an HEA. And I was hopeful that Cain would have to pay for what he did. But guess what? Tegan is an honorable alien, and so, yeah. Cain gets his HEA as well. And I hated that. I hated that. I can't even tell you how much I hated it. So this book got a 2.5 star. It's a 5 on the spice scale because there's sex happening. Some kinky stuff. There's even some FF and FFM stuff happening because Cain likes to make his human women fuck now and then. But it was a lot. And I know people love Arlie Smith. This was a viewer recommended book. And thank you for recommending it. I did want to try another of Arlie Smith. There are others of her books that I know people are going to be like, oh, read The Last Stand of the Gone or like whatever. And I'm like, not right now. Maybe not for 6 months to a year will I read another book that is this long and this painful. Because I read Land of the Beautiful Dead and it was okay, but it hurt me. And this one was... The writing is beautiful. I understand why people are compelled. I was compelled. I don't finish 650-page books if I'm not compelled. But that doesn't mean I had to love it. So it was 2.5 stars. It was a 5 on the spice scale. There were trigger warnings for rape, slavery, murder, gore, violence, body modification, the killing of children, domestic abuse. There was just so much ceaseless rape and murder that, like, the garbage swallowed the good for me. Because I don't like to read abusive things if there's not a purpose. Now, one final thing I'll say, because I know I'm ranting a bit and I try not to do that in my normal reviews. Like, I try not to shit on things for no reason, right? So Pam Godwin loves this author. Loves her. And there are a lot of elements in these books that I can see that Pam took inspiration from. I just think she does it better. I think she makes them more romantic. Also, Pam doesn't write as much erotic horror. She's only written like one erotic horror. And I also hated that book. So there you go. But I definitely see her inspiration. And Pam Godwin writes very beautiful long reviews for these books. So if you go to the Goodreads, you'll see Pam Godwin's review. And you may be more compelled to read it. Because it's what compelled me to read it. And I regret it. Okay, this book took me 3 days to read. And I hated it. But I couldn't stop. So if you like to hate yourself while you read a book, give it a try. Okay, moving on. Then I needed something that was just wacky after that. So I read Make Me by Summer O'Toole. This was recommended by my friend Ashley. She said this one was wacky. Also, the selling point for this book was that it was like Queens and Monsters and the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark is how it was sold. And I get those comparisons. But, so there's like insta-love happening on the hero's part. The heroine is kind of stalking the hero because she believes the hero killed her friend. Now, it's because he has a specific tattoo, the tattoo that's on the cover of this. He has a fox on his hand. But all of his brothers have this tattoo, and the people, like, and I think some people, a part of their mafia do. So she thinks that he killed her friend. So she's stalking him because she wants to know more about him. And she gets a job at a restaurant, not realizing that like he's the owner of it, and he becomes obsessed with her. He knows she's stalking him, and he gets pretty pushy with her and wants to make her his. So this definitely has the like, you're my woman, I'm taking you, I'm making you mine. There's some dubcon in this. It was wacky, it was fun. It was what I needed after reading Heat. So I gave it 4 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale, and the trigger warnings are there's some stalking and dubious consent, but it was a fun time. And then I read His Frozen Heart by Georgia LaCar. This was one that was on my Kindle Unlimited TBR books. This is a forced proximity that I wanted to read. This one has a widowed hero who's now a recluse. He blames himself for what happened to his wife and children. He never really loved his wife. He was kind of pushed into marrying her, and so he regrets what happened to his wife and children, who are dead now. Our heroine is traveling somewhere, and she ends up kind of in a like car chase trying to get away from a guy who's following her, and she ends up going like down an embankment near the hero's cabin, and they end up staying together. There's a twist at the end of this one that I literally did not see coming at all. I don't understand where it came from. I don't hate it, but I also don't understand where it came from or how we got there. But it was okay. Grumpy Sunshine, Billionaire Recluse, Widowed Hero, Kate and Katrina were their names. And so I gave this one 3 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale, and the trigger warning is loss of children, honestly, would be the biggest one for me. Then I read a new release that I was so excited to read. This book was so good. I read Games with the Orc by Catherine Moon. This is her new release. I guess she was releasing this on her Patreon chapter by chapter, but this was erotic delightfulness. So this one is book 1 in the Monster Smash series. There's this agency that you can go to set up sexual encounters, and our heroine is just getting out of a relationship where she felt very kind of smothered. Her name is Sunny. She's like, she gets proposed to by her boyfriend, and she says no because she knows they're just not really compatible, but she also doesn't know if she really does want what she desires or if she only has wanted it in her head. So she decides to go through this agency, and she like goes through all this quiz. She gets paired with someone, and she's listed all of her desires, and she goes in the whole kit and caboodle. So she signs up for a 5-day thing where she's basically going to kind of live in scene for most of the time. And so it's going to be where she is submissive to this orc. There's going to be primal play. There's going to be trying out lots of different like kinks with him, and she's so excited. So our orc, his name is Kellar. He has been doing this for like 8 years. He loves doing this. But one of the things with orcs is that once they've like, sometimes they can find their mate, and if it's the right person, then the more sex that they have, the more that this like connection builds. That's never happened to him before, but he gets kind of a warning from like the agent who set them up, where she's like, a lot about this woman is perfect for you. I wouldn't be surprised if you mate with her. And he's like, why would I want to? Why would I want to lose my job? If I mate, I literally can't sleep with anyone else. So, you know, that was a bit of a Chekhov's gun there. We're like, well, of course they're going to end up. And yeah, it's absolutely fun. Like, they play out a lot of her scenarios. So there's a week of sexy times, but the book doesn't end with that. Like, the first half of the book is that time in the at this location where they're getting to do this, and then we see kind of the aftermath of everything and like where they're gonna go next. And I really loved this. I loved how it was set up. I loved how it was done. I loved the different kinks we experienced. I love primal play. I love all the sexiness. So there isn't really trigger warnings for this. It's just the author lists a lot of the sexual content, like if there's any of the kinks you don't love, but there was none that like really didn't work for me. There was bondage, there was primal play, there was, I mean, copious fluids because he's an orc. There is like, you know, pet names, and there is like role plays, because sometimes he's Kel, who's like master, and sometimes there's Beast, where he'll give into his beastly nature when he like chases her and stuff. And oh, it was all consensual, and it was all beautiful, and I loved it so much. And there is gonna be more in this series. The next one I think is supposed to be about the gargoyle who works for them. who works for the company, and that looks really cool. So I gave this one 5 stars, and it was a 5 on the spice scale because we are going all the time. Also, size difference. There's lots of good stuff in this one. Okay, then I did my reread of House of Earth and Blood, which, yeah, I ended up rereading this way earlier. Well, not super earlier, because this is our January book for S. Damn Along, but I needed another audiobook for finishing up my quilt as well as my trip home, and so I started this, and then I couldn't stop it. And yeah, I won't talk about this much because, like, we're going to talk about it in the wrap up in S. Jam Along in January. I think the live show is the 29th for that. But this was great. This one's very much like urban fantasy mixed with like a mystery. At the beginning of this book, Bryce Quinlan loses her best friend as well as the pack of devils, who are a pack of wolves that her best friend is kind of like in charge of, and they all get murdered. And then we skip ahead kind of 2 years, and the same like demon that had killed them is loose again, and Bryce gets kind of drawn into the investigation along with an angel named Hunt Athalar, who is a angel who's a slave because he tried to rebel against everything. And so there's lots of connections to the other books, and this one's going to be so much fun to talk about. I can't wait. But it is long. The audiobook's amazing. I cried my eyes out at the end because Sarah J. Maas knows how to end a book and break your heart, and this was a 6-star read. There's not really any spice in this. There's just a couple kissing and like grinding scenes that happen, but I love it. I love it so much. I love it. Then I just went kind of crazy. So in the last couple days, I just wanted to read whatever, but I did end up reading some more books that were on my TBR, so that's great. I read Yakuza Lover Volume 4. This one ended up being like a Christmas novel too, because Yuri, it's Yuri and Oya are in this manga, and Yuri wants to have a beautiful Christmas with Oya. Now, the way things are set up, like, he has a house for her to stay at, but he can't be there all the time. Like, he needs to do his work for the Yakuza, and he can't always promise to be there. Like, she never knows when he'll be there. And she really asks him to try to be there for Christmas because she wants to give him a Christmas. She wants to be able to wish him Happy Christmas and be there with him. And so he's going to try his best to do it. So this one was fun. I liked it a lot better than the previous one. So that one was 4 stars, and it was a 2 on my spice scale. Then I read Undertow by Sam Mariano. I want to catch up with the Coastal Elites, and I was getting behind on some of her books because she released a whole bunch like right in a row, which was kind of cool. So Undertow is actually the first one I've read in a long time that's about 2 adults. Like, nobody was 18 in this relationship. So this book, though, like, it's novella length, but it is like a full love story in this one. And this is between Hayden and Gemma, and they're the parents of the couple that's going to be in book 3 in this series, which is going to be Contempt in that one. I don't know when that's coming, but I wanted to read this one soon. So Gemma is a single mom. She is a dance teacher, and she lives in this really great neighborhood. And this neighborhood is trying to like get rid of her because they don't like her living there for some reason. And so she's been kind of like bullied by her neighbors. And so she has a daughter. Her name is Parker. And when she comes home and sees, like, she gets kind of harassed by one of the other neighbors, and she's like, that's it. I'm done with it. So she asks her daughter, who's the best lawyers at your school? Like, you go to school with all these preppy kids. Which one of their parents is a lawyer? And she's like, well, Satan's dad is a lawyer, and Satan is her daughter's bully. Again, that's going to be book 3. And so she goes in to see him. Well, she happens to still be wearing her work clothes, which that day is a belly dancer outfit. And so we have Hayden, who is a high-class lawyer, and he is like, thinks that she is a stripper, like there to give him a lap dance. And so they have kind of this like funny back and forth. And then he's like, well, I'll look into your case if you go out with me. And she's like, no, I can't go out with my daughter's bully's father. I just can't do it. And he's like, what do you mean my son's your daughter's bully? And he's like, yeah, your kid Landon bullies my daughter, and he has for years. And so Hayden is actually a widower. His wife died kind of tragically 6 years ago. And he has kind of not been a great dad lately, and he acknowledges that. But this is him pursuing Gemma. And where we get to at the end of this book, obviously since this has an HEA, these two are together, which is going to put Parker and Landon in direct contact with each other, which Parker wants to make the best of it so that her mother and Hayden can be happy, because she does really like Hayden. She thinks he's great for her mom, and he is very good to her. And he's promised her that if my son doesn't man up and like be good to you, he's out. Like, he's out. I will cut him off because you don't deserve to be treated this way. But Parker doesn't want to do that to Landon. So we can tell going into contempt, she's probably going to lie about the things he's doing to her so that these two can be happy. But anyway, I loved this. There still was a little bit of dubcon because it is San Mariano, but honestly, this was, like, aside from some of her really kooky ones she has, this was one of kind of like the sweetest romances I've read by her. Which it's like, I know, really? Especially coming after, like, Even If It Hurts, which was the first book in this series, to read this one, I just was kind of smiling the whole time. So, like I said, there is still slight dubcon because their first sex scene together, he definitely, like, gets her drunk and just kind of goes for it. So I'm not saying it's sweet. I'm saying it's sweet for San Mariano, if that makes sense. So I had a great time with this book. I gave this 4.5. No, what did I give this? Yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. So really liked that. Next, I finished The Auction by Maggie Cole. I was lucky enough to get an arc of this book. This is the first book in her duet that's coming out. It will be out, the first one will be out February 1st, the next one will be out March 1st, so they'll be out pretty quickly. This book is, in a way, a lot of Maggie Cole. So this one is an age gap, but, like, they're both not super young. Like, our heroine is 28 and he's 44. But she's the business partner of her father. And so in the beginning, we see the prologue where she's 21. It's her 21st birthday, and he is 37. And she is kind of, like, hitting on him, and he's like, she's beautiful. I would really love to fuck her, but that won't be happening. And there's kind of a scene that happens. Then we fast forward 7 years. She's actually kind of run away from her dad and been hiding and living kind of paycheck to paycheck, trying to become a singer. She's changed her name and gotten away from her father, who's been trying to force her into, like, an arranged marriage for the business. In Riggs's life, our hero, he has discovered that Blakely's father is embezzling money. Now, he doesn't just want to turn this guy in because it would also ruin his business. It wouldn't just destroy what the dad was doing, it would destroy Riggs's career too. So he wants to find a way to go against him. Separate from that, he decides that he wants a new sub in his life. He will go to these auctions where these new submissives are found, and they will enter this auction, and then the master, the sir, will buy someone for a month's time where they will train them. And the money that they paid in the auction, though, goes to a charity. So it's a charity sub-auction. Now, our heroine ends up at this club accidentally. She's running from her father's men, and she goes into this club, and they assume that she is one of the women. So she's just trying to get away. She's just trying to stay there. And so she ends up in this auction. She gets bought by Riggs, and then he discovers who it is, and he really wants her. He doesn't know she ended up there accidentally. He thinks this woman that he's dreamed about for all these years is actually into being a submissive. So he's like, perfect. Not only do I finally get to fuck this woman that I've wanted to all this time, train her to be a submissive, I also will have a giant fuck you to her father. So let's go for it. So yeah, that's the start. Let's just say that. So this did have a cliffhanger, but we won't have to wait too long. So The audiobook should be up for pre-order for this very soon if they aren't already, because Maggie Cole is able to do simultaneous releases. So yeah, definitely go pre-order The Auction and The Vow. The cover for The Vow is absolutely beautiful as well. It's so pretty. So anyway, I gave this 4.5 stars. Like some of Maggie Cole's books, I do think that there are a lot of like time jumps that happen near the end. Like she'll go a month later, 3 weeks later, this later. And it feels like we miss a lot of the like soft moments that they have together. But I really liked it. I love the kind of BDSM that Maggie writes. And so I gave this 4.5 stars. And it was a 4.5 on the spice scale. With trigger warnings for like, there's a lot of BDSM going on in here. Okay, and then I read 2 quick little holiday novellas just because I randomly was in the mood to get through these. So I read Sap and Spile by Vera Valentine. This was only a 50-page little thing. This used to be in an anthology, and now it's on Kindle Unlimited. And it is like these 2 dryads who are in a relationship together, and they like protect this farm that's been used for maple syrup. And they've been under the control of the heroine's husband. She's just found out that her husband has cheated on her, and she is going to leave him, but she ends up finding out about the dryads, and they ask her to help them get control of their forest back, and that involves a sexual experience. So it was fine. It was too short. Like, honestly, it wasn't enough, but I gave it 4 stars, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. And then the last thing that I read was His Christmas List by T.L. Swan. This already had 2 stories in it that I'd already read, but I'd forgotten one of them, so I reread it because it has Gabriel Ferreira in it, who we will be reading about in a book later on. So I look forward to that, I guess, maybe. But I also read His Christmas Angel, which was a cop and this woman, and it was a quickie. So this one was 3.5, a 2.5 on the spice scale. It was okay. It could have been better. It's all the reasons that I don't read a lot of Christmas novellas, because there just isn't enough to like bite into with it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But anyway, those are the books that I am ending week 52 with. The other books I finish, I will start putting them into January already. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. It means so much to me. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Like this video if you did. Leave a comment. Tell me what your favorite book you read during Christmas vacation was. And yeah, we'll see you in the new year where we're starting over with week number 1. So have a great day, everyone. Bye.